Okay, if you can hear me, my name is Ben Thompson. I am the CEO and co-founder of Employment Hero, and I wanted to thank you for joining us today to talk about professional employer organizations, what they are and why they're relevant to us right now. I'm joined by our Chief Operating Officer, David, or Dutchy Holland, as we call him. Dutchy, welcome.
G'day, thank you very much. Excited to be talking about this.
Excellent. So before we get too far into it, so maybe a little more on you, Dutchy. As our COO, you have spent a lot of time helping us build out what is the new service, Global Teams, which relates to PEO. But before all that, you've spent decades in finance and operations on a global scale, helping businesses transact and build very valuable businesses around the world. So I'm sure you have some very relevant experience for us.
Yep, absolutely. And
don't disagree, do you, Dutchy?
No, with a cross-border and international bent to it as well. So it's been exciting to be able to apply that to this project.
Excellent. Well,
yeah.
Before we get into the nuts and bolts, I wanted to launching into this through COVID. We're seeing, am I freezing there, Dutchy? My internet not stable?
I think you're just back, Ben. I think it was bad, but you're back now.
All right. Well, hopefully it doesn't keep doing that. So yeah, we're in a new world of work. The future of work is much more mobile, much more inclusive, and much more fair. Working remotely, that 92% of people who have been working remotely would like to continue working remotely on a permanent or semi-permanent basis. And when we thought about that, we realized that it's not really possible for small and medium-sized organizations to sustain remote work out of their local area unless they have the rails to do it on, unless they have the infrastructure for employment. And that's why we've been searching for ways to help our customers and maintain that remote working environment for their current employees, but also to open up a pool of talent that is global in nature. But once again, it relies on having the infrastructure, or what I call the rails, to employ people. If you were to think about setting up a business in Barcelona or employing somebody in Barcelona today without a PEO behind you, you would have to establish a company in Spain. You would have to understand Spanish employment law and payroll and how it all works. It'd be a hell of a lot of work, and most people would quickly bounce off that and decide it was too hard. So we're focused on, as I say, laying the rails that allow you to employ people in countries like Spain, literally with the click of a mouse, and we can take care of everything else for you. But that really requires a professional employer organization to sit behind everything, and that's why we're spending time on it today. So I think I'll pass to you, Dutchy, to sort of give us the 101 of what is a PEO. I think you're on mute.
That's another dollar.
Or a beer.
Thanks, Ben. Look, a professional employer organization, or PEO, is simply a service that, as you've already highlighted, allows any company to access employees around the world, and thereby accessing the best talent. Essentially, what a PEO does is it manages everything to do with the employment process. So from onboarding through to payroll and benefits, remuneration. It also handles all the HR processes and guidance. Importantly, it handles the employment taxes And of course, all of that done in accordance with the local government regulations and requirements of that country, based on the employee's location. So in order to do that, of course, what that means is that we have local entities in each country. We've done the hard yards, we've laid the rails, we've put the infrastructure in those countries, and therefore those entities that we've created becomes the employer of your candidate. We handle all the local regulations, the remittances, the payroll, the remittance of the taxes, and of course, all the filings in those countries. So Ben, when you're talking about setting up a company in Spain, it doesn't just stop with the setting up. Just like here in Australia, you've got quarterly and annual returns of everything from tax to pensions. And so what a PEO does through this process is it effectively provides a lot of peace of mind to the employer or the client, knowing that they're accessing the best talent in the world, but they're doing it on a basis which is completely compliant. It takes the stress out of establishing those entities, understanding the local employment law, and thereby effectively providing small businesses with the same opportunities as larger businesses with bigger geographic reach, and of course more resources and expertise to get over the top of those local issues, and thereby able to access the best talent from anywhere in the world. That's the nuts and bolts of it, Ben.
Yeah. Well, I think it's worth also discussing how come Australians don't know about PEOs, but they're much more common in other parts. So this is an industry that I've tracked for well over a decade, and I spent time in the US about a decade ago meeting with the PEO Industry Association, NAPIO, and was just astounded to hear the history and the scope of the PEO industry in the US. Just some facts. The PEO industry in the US is about 30 years old. It was established because small businesses had to provide workers' compensation and health insurance to their employees, but they couldn't buy it as cheaply as larger companies could. And someone had the smart idea of aggregating SMEs together under a single employing entity and negotiating high quality but cost-effective access to insurance premiums, and that took off and became what is now a $270 billion industry in the US. There's about 900 PEOs operating across the US, and they employ about 4 million people, which is 10% of the workforce that is employed by small companies employing between 10 and 99 employees. So a huge proportion of the US workforce is actually employed via PEOs because it makes a lot of sense to do so. Those businesses get access to expertise, to software, to all of what it takes to manage people well through a professional employer organization. One other aspect of that is here in Australia, you have to wonder why hasn't the PEO industry taken off? And there's an interesting issue is that the payroll tax here in Australia, if you were to use a PEO and you weren't paying payroll tax yourself, you would have to pay payroll to be eligible for payroll tax. And a company, Employment Innovations, and Shane Duffy, who's been on these webinars previously, has been doing a lot of research over the last few months around how Employment Innovations could help get more people back to work. And what they found is that payroll tax could actually be managed in a much better way to enable small businesses, small employers to access services like PEO services, but without the taxes foregoing their payroll tax. And I might just get a link to be shared with everybody from Jules, which is Shane's research into that area. I think it might be some worthwhile reading after the webinar. So yeah, 30-year industry, $270 billion in value in the US. A huge proportion of the workforce engaged through PEOs. 1 in 10 small businesses use a PEO. Obviously it works, but we're looking at taking that model to the world and doing it on a global scale. So I might throw back to you, Dutchy. What would you say are the main benefits of using a PEO for a small or medium-sized employer?
Yeah, look, I think we've touched on this already, but it's worth digging into in more detail. It is about having the ability to access the best talent, no matter where it is. Historically, in an office-based business environment, obviously you're restricted to hiring from a pool of talent dictated by who can physically commute to your office. So in Sydney, that's definitely an hour. Some people an hour and a half to get from the outskirts of Sydney in. But that effectively means you're restricted to employing from 4 million people, many of whom are at school, so probably aren't able to be considered. So what the PEO model does, of course, is it allows you to say, I don't mind whether you're in Bondi, Bathurst, or Barcelona. I just want to make sure that I get the best person. And one of the reasons that's becoming really important is because there's, I think the word you've used in the past, Ben, is atomization of work, and a real difference in terms of how pools of talent are emerging through the world. I was looking the other day, Spain currently has 40% youth unemployment, with very, very high rates of university education in a number of key sectors, including engineering, architecture, and design. That means that there's a huge, massive pool of very highly skilled people available through Spain, who businesses anywhere in the world, and in fact, we've seen a lot of evidence with our launches in the UK that UK businesses are really digging into that. But that experience would replicate around the world. We can look at just about any economy in the world. If you're a business that has a shortage of access to talent and you can't get the right people from where you're physically based, then the PEO model is a big option for you. Beyond that, I think that the second major benefit that's probably obvious to most people is that it cuts out a lot of the cost and complexity of trying to employ people from outside of your immediate state or your immediate country. Hiring and running teams should be simple and efficient as possible. That's our mission here at Employment Hero. Through using a PEO, not only do you get those access to those people, but you get the peace of mind of knowing that you've got experts responsible for employing that person, and you know that they're going to be employed on a compliant basis. I think beyond that, Ben, there are certainly some points that are close to our heart in terms of equity, ensuring that everybody has the right to a proper job and to be paid fairly for that with all the benefits that they're owed. Nothing against the gig economy, but it does have some interesting challenges in terms of how it treats people. But they're probably the two main benefits: is making it simpler and easier and cost effective, and really broadening the access of the talent pool that you have access to.
Yeah, and we've seen some great examples of that, and I know that I'm using ourselves as an example, but people who are experts at payroll are unique. Being a payroll expert means doing the same thing to a 100%, 100% accuracy day after day after day, and it's very hard to find those people. They're not common, and we used to try and recruit our payroll experts in Sydney, within a 1 hour drive of our office, and it was hard to find them. As soon as we decided that we were remote first and that we could recruit people from anywhere, we started finding payroll experts in Brisbane, Muswellbrook, Adelaide, all over Australia that we could easily recruit. But and so we just managed to expand our talent pool and find fantastic people far faster and more easily than we've ever done before. And that's just, been a game changer for us. We've also managed to expand our business, Employment Hero, into Singapore, Malaysia, the UK, and New Zealand without ever getting on a plane. We were capable of recruiting people, onboarding people, and becoming an international business remotely. And so it's incredibly powerful what you can achieve once you recognize that remote employment gives you that type of scope. Dutchy, any other risks or things to watch out for people considering using a PEO?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, the obvious ones are around compliance. You want to be working with a reputable party who knows what they're doing. Our business dates back and has its origins, not least through you, Ben, with over 20 years of expertise in managing employment and making sure that everything's done correctly. Literally hundreds of thousands of people over your lifetime and your career and the lifetime of our business. So reputable partner like Employment Hero. I think the number one tip that's probably less obvious is about culture. When you go remote first, and obviously using a PEO, you're committing to a remote model by definition. It's really important that you work to maintain your cultural elements. This is not about just setting up great big factories of zombies to do work for you. This is about actually allowing your business to grow and grow its people and its footprint. And therefore, the culture is really important. Just because your employees are working from home or working from another part of the world, it's still vital that you focus as a manager and as a business owner on the way of working in your culture. And so what we've set to do with our PEO solution, which I think we've touched on, we're calling global teams, although it can be used on a regional basis or a global basis. What we've really set out to do is make sure that everybody involved in this process, whether they're employed down the road, across state lines or across international boundaries, feels like they're part of the team and is managed like they're part of the team. So in actual fact, someone who comes through our PEO and our global teams model will look and feel in our HR platform exactly like all of your other employees. Their line managers will see them. They'll be able to participate in goal setting. They'll be able to see the announcements and shout outs and participate in that. And all of the elements that go towards trying to make a distributed team, a remote team, feel like a team and perform as a team and align. All of that's available through the PEO model. So if you're building a world-class team, you really should build a world-class culture. And I'd say that's the number one thing that most people forget when they're thinking about using a PEO model.
Great point. And having that single platform for managing everyone makes that incredibly easy, or much easier. All right, so can you give us some example of some use cases of the type of people who would consider using a PEO or our global team service? Yeah, let's talk through some of those examples.
Well, the one you've given is a really great one. And that's our situation where the talent that we needed, the skill set that we needed was just not available anymore in Sydney. And so we were able to go up, and we've now got teams, not just from interstate, we've got teams from, I think, the Hunter Valley, regional New South Wales, Adelaide, Queensland. So we've been able to benefit from that. So anyone that's looking for a particular skill set that might be in short supply where they are, they can access the best talent around the world. I think another really important one is what you touched on with our own international expansion. If you want to put feet on the ground, if you need those people into new markets, if you've been thinking about launching in Singapore or taking your business into new global markets, one of the fastest way to get those feet on the ground without having to worry about local entities and the tax and the regulatory requirements around your employment is to use the PEO model. And I think that's probably the one that the early days that we're seeing really work well, is businesses that have felt like they've wanted to go international, and particularly now with the post-pandemic new world, e-commerce and digital working, people are actually free to take their product international. But if they need that local BDM, that local sales presence, a PEO model would be a great way to go. There's no doubt cost savings and being able to add that employee that perhaps has been a marginal ROI for you. So accessing employees on a very cost-efficient basis. We believe in the democratization of work and that everybody has a right to a job anywhere in the world. The reality is there are some parts of the world where labor is less expensive. So that definitely comes into the frame, and the PEO can give you access to those pools of talent. I think if you've got existing contractors overseas, and one of the questions we get is around, why not contractors? We can get into that, but if you've been using contractors on sort of an ad hoc basis, increasingly governments around the world are cracking down on that. I know the UK has brought in legislation coming in effect in April, which will make contracting much more difficult if in fact they really are employees. So people who have been looking at having their existing global workforce that might be on a bit of an ad hoc basis, if you don't know exactly how they're employed, chances are they're not employed correctly. So the PEO model makes it cost effective, and also it ensures that those people are getting the benefits and salaries and terms and conditions that they're entitled to. And then the last one, I think, is actually, in terms of our own state here, and particularly the US with their 50 states, but with the states of Australia, you've touched on it, different payroll taxes, different workers' compensation. and obviously work from home has OHS implications that you don't necessarily control. All of that goes away when you use a PEO. So by using a global team style service, you don't have to worry about payroll and payroll taxes. You don't have to worry about workers' compensation. It's all just pulled together into one simple fee. And of course, all of that comes with our HRIS service, which if you're using that for the core business, just immediately puts that person into the middle of your business and lets them feel and participate in the business as if they were right next door. So I think they're probably the main use cases, and we'll talk a lot about those over the coming weeks and months. And we're talking to a lot of clients, but early days, that's the sort of thematics we're seeing.
I think that, just to highlight one of those examples, and we were, I was an example of this when we wanted to become a technology company. Employment Hero wasn't always around. We had to make the switch from being a services company to starting Employment Hero, and that meant we needed access to developers. But we didn't know if it was going to work. We wanted to run an experiment. We wanted to build an experimental prototype product. And so many businesses today know that they have to be becoming more technology focused. They need to have a technology team. They need to be able to develop an app or a website or something to improve their internal efficiency. But they just don't know where to start because they can't find the talent. They're not in that space. Now, every business who wants to explore that can go out to the world and find developers and business analysts who can help them design and build technology for their business, but from anywhere. And I just think that's the one area that I'd really encourage everybody on the call to think, what other development have you always wished you could do but never known how to start? Now you can recruit those people through Employment Hero, no matter where they happen to be. You're not having to compete with Atlassian here in Sydney with 3,000 highly paid engineers, and you're not going to strip those out of Atlassian in any way. So it's just opens a whole world of opportunity to businesses.
Yep. So Ben, I can see a couple of questions starting to drift in, but I think the main thing that we need to address is how you might actually get started on that journey. So you've said businesses might be looking to access some of this talent and try new things. What do they do to get started?
Well, two ways to approach it. The first way is if you're already using Employment Hero, you have access to global teams where we may not have made it as obvious as we will in the future, but we've introduced an applicant tracking system into Employment Hero that allows you to advertise a role here in Australia or anywhere on the world, basically anywhere in the world. Employment Hero now integrates with 1,700 job boards all over the planet. You can post jobs to those job boards. You can shortlist applicants, but obviously once you find somebody who has the skill set and experience that you want, if they're not here in your local area, then you have to figure out how to employ them. And it's at that point that you can explore global teams, because you can tell us you found somebody and we will then step in to guide you through the process of bringing that employee into the global teams environment with us as the legal employer and you as the host employer. So it's as simple as using the recruitment function within Employment Hero for those people who are already using Employment Hero. And for those people who aren't using Employment Hero, best way to get started is to call us, speak to one of our business development reps, and they can not only talk you through our platform, but they can show you exactly how Global Teams integrates with that and how you can get started building your remote team through our Global Teams service.
All right. Couple more questions coming in. There's a specific question from John around whether or not existing employees on our platform can be transferred to new locations. That's a slightly separate question around how our SaaS is set up, but yeah, absolutely. We now have versions of Employment Hero that are, you've mentioned Asia and New Zealand, so certainly Singapore and Malaysia, New Zealand. You're now able to do that. So if you want to set them up specifically in local versions of the platform, just get in touch with support@employmenthero.com and they'll help you walk you through that. But that's been another great development in our business. Dylan asks, what sets Employment Hero apart from other established POs? Well, I think what's really important for us to emphasize here today is that core employer of record component, that PO component that we've built, the international infrastructure, that's just a part of really what Global Teams offers. It's an important part because it allows us to solve that local employment requirement. But really what we're looking at when we talk about Global Teams is a very holistic view. Ben, you mentioned the ATS, and of course we're going to leverage that to build up great talent pools and be able to help our employers find talent next year. That then leverages into the PEO component, which allows you to onboard and compliantly and legally employ people anywhere in the world. But really what I think sets Employment Hero apart is that we're the first platform to combine both of those first two elements with a really great HR system. Our system has plenty of tools around employee engagement, plenty of tools to help you do goal setting and make sure everyone's aligned and can check in, announcements and shout out, reward and recognition and benefits. So I think if I was to say, if there was one thing that really set us apart from existing PO providers, it's that holistic mission that we've always had to make employment easier and more rewarding. It's not just about solving the legal compliance employment issue. It's about embedding that person in your organization, aligning them and making sure they're productive from day one. I don't know if you've got anything to add on that, Ben?
No, I think you've kind of described it, but it's what I can see in my head, and the way that Global Teams works is so seamless. It's like you log into Employment Hero and the world's talent is available through our platform. Literally, you don't have to leave employmenthero.com to go and recruit the best talent all over Australia and the rest of the world. It's that seamless, that well integrated, and it's sitting right under your fingertips. There's another question there around pay for people working in other countries. Somebody anonymous asked, do we pay people abroad in accordance with the average pay rates for your main location, i.e. Australia, or the average pay rate in the other country? The answer to that is it's up to you, the employer, the host employer, to pay people according to the value that they provide to your business. If you find a great employee who, in Spain, for example, who is a great developer, you're not going to be able to pay them any less than they're worth. And that may be exactly what they get paid in Australia. It's access to talent. But importantly, the thing that we make sure of through Global Teams is that every employee gets paid their legal entitlements wherever they are, including all of their leave, their pension or superannuation, depending on what they happen to be receiving, such as 17% superannuation in Singapore. All of those entitlements that they're legally entitled to are guaranteed to them, and you know that you are paying people legally and ethically. It's really important. Whereas gig work and independent contracting, there is no safety net, there is no legal framework for the minimum entitlements of those people. And what we see through other platforms is a race to the bottom when it comes to paying those people. Employment Hero stands for legal, ethical, inclusive, and fair employment.
Terrific. I'm not sure how we're going for time. There is one more question, which I think is an interesting one. It starts out asking about, have we seen which countries are the most popular for candidates and finding talent? And yes, the answer is we have, and it's everywhere. It's astonishing. I actually had some predispositions as to where I thought people would be going. And it's really turned out Western Europe, Eastern Europe, the US, Canada, and certainly throughout Southeast Asia. So the answer is everywhere. But the second half of the question, Ben, I think will appeal to you. Do we have plans to send out reports, and once we have lots of data and users? And I think benchmarking and the large amount of data that we have is something that we'll be able to help provide to our employers if you are looking to grow in certain parts of the world. But data, of course, Ben, is something you've always been talking about. And the answer is yeah, as we build that data and knowledge, we'll certainly be sharing it.
Yep. Any other questions there, Dutchy?
There are, but I think, yeah, look, I think we've touched on most of them. Maybe it might be time to wrap up there. And yeah, I think the key message I think from today is look, the PEO as a mechanical entity, as an infrastructure, is just the effect that we've actually taken care of all those requirements to employ someone in the country where they're located. I think the deeper message that we want to leave our clients with is that your ability, that then creates you a lot of opportunities, and those opportunities are to access great talent and embed those people into your organization. So yeah, look,
somebody's asked, can we please read the list of countries available? We're live in 54 countries around the world. It will take too long to read through them. I think it's safe to say, if you anywhere that you would consider employing somebody, we can employ them for you. It's very, very broad, and we've made a huge effort to give you the access to talent all over the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Dutchy, just on summarizing that, the way I would encourage people to think about it is, when you look at Employment Hero, imagine a rail network that goes out around the world into every country, giving you access to people in Tasmania and Darwin and Perth, wherever in Australia. You can hire them as easily as hiring somebody literally in your local suburb. But equally, you could go further afield and find people in New Zealand, London, Barcelona, anywhere on the planet. And Employment Hero can now connect you to all of the talent that you'll ever need. So it's early days for us, but we're loving innovating around this and helping our customers maintain remote work for their people, which is incredibly important, because we recognize that people love working remotely.
Yep. And if anyone wants to learn more, the best thing is call our team, or you can probably email in at sales@employmenthero.com. Just let them know you're asking about global teams, and they'll get some specific information back to you.
Great. Thanks, Dutchy. I think that'll wrap it up.
Terrific.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.